Hi everyone, Jason here from Spiritualbabies.net. You joined us for the second in our series on Ger in the text, or the 50 Shades of Ger, as we've decided to call it. Obviously, I'm joined by the co-host for this series, Rod Bryant from Natif. Welcome back, Rod. Thanks for joining us again. We had some really awesome comments and people sharing the show. It seemed to have gone off very well. I just want to say thank you to everyone who shared.
Yes. Absolutely.
It was really cool. Shall we jump right in? We're looking at a different book this week, right?
Let's do it. We're actually going to be looking at the book of Exodus, and our first verse is going to be Exodus 2, the second chapter, verse 22. And then what we're going to do is go through these verses. Something that's important to know when you're watching the video is the fact that many of these verses can actually be put in the same category. And we'll explain that in a little bit in a little moment here as we go through. So, do you want to go ahead and take Exodus 2:22?
Yeah, sure. Exodus 2:22. And she bore a son. He called his name Gershom. For he said, "A stranger I have been in a land strange." So just to remind people, if you didn't see last week, we are going to probably be reading most of these in English, but in the way that the English appears in the Hebrew, or the way the Hebrew words appear, and then we'll go back through them as they are in the English, if you like.
Right.
It's probably more confusing than it needs to be. So in basically in English it says that I have been a stranger in a strange land, and obviously the stranger there is Ger.
Right.
And it might be worth recapping that last week we kind of got around the fact that there's no definitive version of Ger. Ger could be pretty much anything.
This is the reason why we're calling this 50 Shades of Ger, because you'll say there are many different. Ger is always going to be a person that is not a native-born Jew, or someone could be a native-born Jew and act like a Ger, though. Okay, so we want to make sure that's clear, and we're going to see this in just a moment with the next verse that we'll bring up. So the idea is the Ger here is just basically, and this text shows us, the Ger here really means a stranger, someone who's not the native-born individual, lives in the land, who is Israelite, a descendant of Abraham. In this case, though, Gershom the son is named Gershom because Moshe lived in a strange land, which was Jethro's land, and he was a stranger there. So that's the basic definition. But from that definition, we're also going to see that the text or the context of many different verses within the Tanakh are going to give us a clear definition of what kind of stranger, henceforth, 50 Shades of Ger. Okay, now that I've done that, we'll move on.
And it's pretty cool there because obviously in the name you've Gershom, and Ger is the Ger. So the Ger in Shom is the Ger that we're reading about. So right. It's right there in the text. So the next, we're moving along. We've got a lot to get through. Exodus 12:19. Do you want to go through this one?
Exodus 12:19 says the 7 days of leaven, Yamashe, which is not to be found in your houses, for whosoever eats that which is leavened shall be cut off. The soul, even that from the congregation of Israel. And it says, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. So, in this situation, we looked through the text and examined what the sages of Judaism, blessed memory, say about this particular text. Rashi and the Mechilta sort of bring down some ideas that basically says this is every Ger, every person that lives within Israel with the Jewish people, or traveling with the Jewish people, they're included. So when we talk about the 50 Shades of Ger, this is what I would call the broad spectrum Ger. So this means anybody. It doesn't matter if you only do the Shabbat Mitzvot, or let's say that you really, you just believe that there's one God and it's the God of Abraham, but you live within the confines of Chol Israel, or all of Israel, then you would be considered part of the inclusion of that group of people that cannot eat leaven during that time.
And it's kind of funny because we start off last week with Abraham being the Ger, and he's the Ger because he's in a foreign land to him. And now the Ger is somebody who's choosing to live within the boundaries of the people Israel, who aren't
Right.
necessarily in the land of Israel, right?
Right.
And there would have been maybe other Ger who were outside the borders of the boundary of Israel,
Right.
who did not choose to do this, but they're still Ger. So it's a good example of how one word can mean many different things depending on the context of where the person is, where the heart is, what their intent is. One thing I did want to bring up is that some people may be reading along at home in their Bibles and they might find the word convert where Ger is. And I might get shot for this, but you can't be a convert and be the stranger at the same time, because as soon as you've decided to convert and you've made your rabbi or in your Jewish community aware of that, you're supposed to be accepted as a Jew. And if that's the case, and it's the case, if that's the case, yeah, right, then you can't be of the congregation of Israel and be a stranger. It just doesn't work that way.
Let me add this as well. There are other texts where it says, when it's talking about treif meat, for example, it says that if it's treif, that the Jew is to not eat this meat, and it is to be given to the ger, or the stranger. So clearly, there is a convert that is a ger. We want to be clear with that. There are converts who are former or who are ger, meaning that they were strangers. They were not native-born Jews. They became converts, therefore they're ger. I think one of the easy things that has been done, or the thing that has been done to make this whole explanation easy, is that the Jew has just simply said, bottom line, a ger is a person who converts. Why have they said that? Well, because of this. For the last 2,000 years, there really hasn't been a need or impetus for the Jewish people to even talk about people who are strangers, who are accompanying the Jews, and who are living with the Jews, and who are supporting Israel. It's never been a subject. So they just made it easy and said, look, a ger is a guy who comes along and decides, I want to reject my idolatry and become a Jew. And in reality, we're finding that the text doesn't necessarily support that.
So keep your eyes open, because just because we've said something is something in one verse doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing in another.
So Exodus 12:48, you want to read that one?
When shall sojourn with you a stranger and keep the Passover to the Lord must be circumcised unto all the males, and then let him come near to celebrate, and he shall be as one born in the land, but anyone uncircumcised shall not eat it. And ger comes up right at the beginning. It's when you sojourn with you a stranger, and it basically means when you have a stranger within your house.
Let's talk about what the sages of blessed memory say about this text, and it's really important to understand this text from oral Torah. The idea is that a person who is sojourning, or is a stranger, a ger, he's with you. This ger will keep Passover to the Lord, must be circumcised, meaning that if he is not circumcised, he cannot participate in the Passover eating of the Passover, participating. But what does it mean? And one would say, well, Jason, Rod, I was circumcised as a child. I was born, medically circumcised, not according to halakha. The sages would say that's not circumcision, because what is true circumcision is one with intent has been circumcised to enter into covenant. Now, a ger who's been circumcised or circumcises himself according to tradition, then is no longer he's not a Noachide anymore. He's actually elevated himself to a ger, a good ger, a righteous ger, right? A good ger. Actually, what they would call a true ger.
Is that a ger tzaddik?
Well, ger tzaddik would mean a righteous ger, but this would be more on the lines of ger tzaddik. It's a true ger. It's not tzaddik, but tzaddik. So a ger tzaddik, a true ger, would be a non-Jew who becomes what basically, and we'll deal with this in the next verse, a Jewish brother. He becomes part of the family. And there's going to be a text that deals specific with that. But let's go back to this verse. 12:48 is saying very clearly that if you are, even if you've been circumcised medically, but not with the intent to be circumcised to be part of the Jewish people, then you really cannot be participating in Pesach. And I know that's going to bust your balloon, but that's just the way it is. That's just what it said. Now, a ger, or non-Jew, who takes on the Shabbat mitzvot and then begins to take on an additional mitzvah here and there, decides, well, next year for Pesach, I want to be with a Jewish family and I want to enjoy Pesach with the Jewish family. They must go through a circumcision, at least the pricking of blood, like from a rabbi or something, make it official. They can also do it themselves. I think technically you can do it yourself, and that would make it all right as well. So anyway.
Okay, so next up is 12:49. And it's a nice short verse. Law 1 shall be the native and to the stranger that sojourns among you. This is a phrase, there should be one law for the native and for the stranger that sojourns among you. This phrase is bandied around a lot in a lot of different faith groups that lean on the foundation of Torah. But it's really important to remember the context, right? That the sojourn part is often left off, and it's normally read, there should be one law for the native and to the stranger, but the sojourn is generally left off.
Sojourn is a very important key. That is actually the key to this whole text, and this is also in context. It goes with verse 48, which is talking about Pesach or Passover.
So it's important to remember, and I don't want to. I don't want to say that phrase. I was going to say busting anyone's balls, but I don't want to make anyone feel because of their circumstance they can't get involved, because there are people that live in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
But where possible, it's my opinion that you can utterly sojourn with the Jewish nation if you want to, in some way, and if you can't do that in a real life way, then do it like many of us do through the window of the internet.
Right. So, very good point. I'm glad you said that, because most people are going to be hearing this and say, "Well, what are you saying, Jason? Are you saying that I can't, honor Passover? I can't remember Passover?" No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is, if you're going to be within a Jewish community, and if you're going to be at a Jewish household and participating in a kosher Passover, you have to be circumcised, period. Now, can a B'nai Noach, or a person who has a great love for Israel, have rejected their idolatry, can they sit down with their family and have a meal remembering the journey of the Israelites out of Egypt and redemption? By all means, you can do that. There's nothing saying that you can't do that, because you're not attempting to try to replicate some kosher Jewish practice in your home. You're just remembering the Passover.
Yeah, that goes for all of the other feasts. And I've had this conversation with people before. There's absolutely nothing wrong with celebrating the amazing things that God's done for Israel or for you. And if you want to remember any of the feasts in your own home, the feast of lots of traffic passing, that's a good one. I'll cut all this out.
No, just leave it in. It's fine. But let's add this as well. We talk about all the feasts are available to anyone who wants to, remember those things. It's actually a very beautiful and noble thing when the nations began to sojourn with Israel psychologically and spiritually. Now, you may not be able to sojourn, live within a Jewish community, or even know another Jewish family, but psychologically and spiritually, you can connect to Israel at a wonderful level. And we often hear rabbis say, well, if you're not a Jew, God forbid you can't do Shabbos or Sabbath. You can't have honor Sabbath. You can't observe Sabbath. But what they are saying is absolutely correct. But what you're not hearing, or what you are hearing, is, well, you mean I can't honor the Sabbath and make it holy? Well, no, that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is you cannot observe it as an Orthodox Jew would observe it. That's simply all they're saying. So by all means, every person should be encouraged to remember the Sabbath and honor the Sabbath. It's Hashem's day. Good day of rest and study.
And I can remember particularly in the beginning of my walk when I approached a few rabbis and I said, is it okay for me to do the Shabbat? And they all said, you absolutely can't. But what my understanding of remembering and honouring the Shabbat was utterly different to what they thought I meant, because their interpretation of it was different to mine, because their understanding is different to mine. They have different rules, and what I thought I was meant to do is different. So, yeah.
So when you
context.
go to a rabbi, and it's important we need to say this because there are going to be individuals that will hear us, and especially hear you encouraging them to connect to the Jewish community if they can. When you go to them, you don't tell them, I'm Shomer Shabbos, meaning I honor the Sabbath. Because in his mind, he's thinking, wow, this non-Jew is not turning lights on and not cooking and, tying their shoelaces a certain way and, not walking too far away from their house. I mean, in their mind, they're thinking, no, you shouldn't do it, because if you're going to try, you're going to violate it. In some level, you're going to violate it. Don't do it at all. And what you should just say is like, I love the Jewish people, and I love to rest on the Sabbath. And I love to know that is God's holy day for the Jewish people. Now, they understand that.
Exodus 18:3. And her 2 sons, of whom the name of one was Gershom, for he said, an alien I have been in a strange land. It feels like we're going over something that we've already covered, and I think we kind of have. So the reference here to Ger can be found in Gershom, but it's really in this one, suddenly it becomes alien. It's kind of funny how different English words have been assigned to this word Ger, but in this one it's alien and not stranger, but essentially it means the same thing. I think we can skip forward.
And the next one is 2010, and it says, but the day of the 7th day of the Shabbos, or the Sabbath, is of the Lord, your God. It says, do not do any work, that is your sons, your daughter, or your manservant, or your maidservant, nor your livestock, nor the stranger. V'geraka. So, nor the stranger that is within your gates. An interesting term that causes the Ramban and Rashi to have differences of opinion on this matter. In essence, this person is one who is pretty much living with a Jewish family, living in Jewish community. He's not a goy. He's a true ger. He's a ger that has not only separated himself from his idolatry, he's also taken the Shabbat mitzvot, and he's taken additional mitzvahs. And he's in essence become like a Jewish brother. He becomes a brother in those particular mitzvahs. So and we're going to see later on Exodus 22. There is some instruction on how you are to treat someone who is a ger, a good, godly, righteous man who lives with or is with the Jewish people. It says, if they've done this individual is like, he's part of the family. And if he's part of the family, then you do not ask him to become your Shabbos ger, Shabbos goy, right? You cannot ask him to work. It's just not proper. So that would mean that if I lived within the Jewish community, or you live right near a Jewish shul, and the rabbi finds out that you are a Noahide / ger, it would be a prohibition for him to call you and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Would you mind coming over and cooking the roast for us on Shabbos so that we can have a nice hot meal? Now, if you wanted to volunteer to do that, you're not prohibited to do that. But he cannot ask you to do that, just in case you've taken on another level of honoring the Sabbath.
So now we are in 22:21, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are kind of heading up to the area we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And a stranger not do mistreat nor oppress, for strangers you were in the land of Egypt. Now it's going to be, all right, so this is going to sound quite harsh, but let me get to where I'm going. So there was a time when this was taught that anybody who you didn't know was a stranger to you. And this was a reflection, if you like, of love your neighbor being anyone else as a human being. Then I went for a period of saying, well, no, this isn't the case, because the stranger in this isn't just anybody. It's the person that's living within the boundaries of your land, the boundaries of your camp.
But actually, we probably should just replace the term in that case with the non-native born Israelite or Jew.
So this is explicitly talking about a non-native born Israelite stroke Jew, but somebody that is living within the camp of Israel. Would that be fair?
That is absolutely on target. And so the whole point is here's my own Rod Bryant version translation of the text. Don't bust the chops of your brother. Right? Be nice to your brother. I mean,
that's your book, Times bestseller. Don't bust the chops of your brother.
Don't bust the chops of a brother, right? So the idea is, I know it sounds a little ghetto of me, but it's anyway. But the whole idea is a person that is within your community, and you know that they're not idolatrous. They live godly lives. It is forbidden to pick on them and say, you're just a Ger, or it's just forbidden. You just don't do it, and you treat them like as if they are part of the family. That is what this text is talking about. Not talking about, I live in Humble, Texas, and I know somebody comes down here from New York City. If they come down from New York City, I've got to treat them nice just because they're strangers from New York City. Now, obviously, we do want to treat all people nice, but this text is absolutely talking about one who's with you. You know them well. You know them very well.
And I guess it's going to be it comes up sometimes that people who want to be a little bit mean or cruel because they're in a bad mood will sometimes bring up the fact that a person has in their past stuff that they're not happy about, choices that they made that they've now changed, but they're ammunition, right? They're ammunition when you want to be cruel and mean.
Right.
And
look, listen. There is I don't think that there's no greater subject matter that has not been so well defined within oral Torah and within the Tanakh. This attitude toward the person who's attempting to sort of be with you, that finds a connection with you, and they're defined a stranger not because they're strange and not because you don't know them, but they're not a native-born Jew, and they're just in many aspects. They are given a place of protection and stature by Hashem, just so they are not abused. And that is beautiful. That's just really beautiful. I love this verse. And the next verse, actually.
Well, why don't you carry on then with 22,
Exodus
20.
32, 9. It says, and a stranger don't oppress, for you know the heart of a stranger. Why? Because you were a stranger in Egypt. So the idea is this. Look, you know what it's like to live in another country, be a part of another country's customs, be practicing within the country, living free in that country, and you know what it's like to be a stranger and treated badly. Don't do that to other people. And that's the text itself. Oh, but going back to, you said something earlier, and I'm not sure if we really touched on it well enough. You mentioned how the one law for both the stranger and the people. We also have to remember those are in the context of the chapters and the verses. But that stranger is a person that is part of the people. I want to make sure that we say that over and over. There is a small Texas town, I won't name it, but I'm sure that there are others like it. It's isolated because it's in the high country, desert all around it, scruff land. But there is a river that runs down through this land that absolutely, it's like an oasis, beautiful. Cold waters called the Rio Frio, meaning cold waters, right? And it has one of the most ancient maple forests in the world. It's called Lost Maples National Forest is there. It's been a secret for years. People that come into the town and want to live there, like retirees or whatever, I've been told, because I've visited this place many times, one guy says, I've been here 25 years. I'm still a stranger. They still treat me as if, you're an outsider. He said, I've been here 20-something years. I ran for mayor. I was a sheriff. He was the sheriff of the town, and they still treated him as if he was an outsider, right? This is what Hashem is saying should not be done. Just can't be done. If a guy's been with you, you don't treat him this way.
Okay, so we are skipping forward now to. Oh, that's it! Wow, look at
That's
that.
it. We're finished.
God,
Wow.
fantastic.
And just think, we didn't bore them too long.
No,
That's nice.
that's right. Yeah.
It was just we bored you just for a short time, and now you can click on the next video and watch
That's
us as we.
right. Yeah, you can go back to the cats playing the
Yes.
keyboards.
Oh, the funny cat videos. Okay. I think we should recap. So before we end, this whole idea that a ger is the non-Jew who resides with Israel, but we would add this in this virtual world that we live, that the non-Jew is also, the ger is also the person who psychologically and spiritually finds a connection to Judaism. And though they're not trying to play as if they're Jews, they truly believe the mitzvahs that Jews do are beautiful. And they want at some level to be a part of that and to understand it. That's why they study Torah. That's why they try to be involved in groups that are studying Torah. But they've completely forsaken their idolatrous ways. And they've taken on true Torah wisdom. And that, my friend, is the true ger, the ger that lives in the world around us. And that's who we're trying to help you to see and identify in the 50 Shades of Ger.
Nicely said. And just to remind you that last week we had a word from Rabbi David Katz, who said that ger is a flux term, and that's really apparent when we look at last week. The ger was Abraham, and he was a ger because he was in a foreign land with foreign people. This week we're looking at a foreign people, if you like, who are in their own land. Really, they're with their own people. They're just not of those people in a native sense. And next week that's going to change a little bit more. The week after that it's going to change a little bit more. And as we go through these, and maybe after that we'll have a look at the ger popping up in other places throughout your Tanakh, in the prophets and the writings, and we'll see ger meaning other different things that point to what the ger is today.
Very good.
So yeah, we are done. Fantastic. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you again, Rod, for joining me on this walk.
My delight.
It's awesome fun. Thank you guys for watching at home. Don't forget to head over to, there'll be links on the corner of the screen right now, so you can head over and see lots of yeah, that's right, lots of the other videos Rod's done, and underneath the video as well to go to his main page. And well, you know where you can find me because you're already here. Come and hit us up on Facebook, and don't be afraid to ask us questions. That's why we're here, and if we can answer we will. We'll see you all again next week. Bye bye.
Shalom.